me having my children, it made it more powerful for me to be able to pursue these things for the community. Like, it wasn't just about my children. It was like for the people in Grassy, like the community members. And then it was just like we all helped each other. It's like once you start talking and then you start energizing each other and you help each other. Because a fight like this, it doesn't take one person, it takes a whole community.
You're listening to Dignity and Joy, a podcast from FoodShare. Join us as we confront the systems of oppression that impact who has access to food and the land it's grown on, and who doesn't. To achieve something better will take hard work from all of us, and can only be done if we listen closely to the people who are already leading change. Our host, Sheldomar Elliott, delves into the connections between food and justice, with folks who have their fingers on the pulse and their hands in the soil. Together, they dream in color and consider what it would take to build a just and hopeful world, one where everyone can feed themselves, their loved ones, and their community, with dignity and with joy.
Hi, I'm Sheldomar Elliott, and welcome to this episode of Dignity and Joy, a podcast from FoodShare. Today, our guest is Judy Da Silva. Judy is a Grassy Narrows community member and a mother to 5 children, who she says help her have the positive energy to continue to look for justice and for the solution to the mercury poisoning of the river system in Grassy Narrows and Mother Earth. In recognition of her lifelong work to advocate for environmental protection using peaceful, nonviolent direct actions, Judy has been awarded the Michael Sattler Peace Prize, the Human Rights Watch Award, the Art Manual Environmental Award, and an honorary doctorate from Wilfrid Laurier University. Judy personally suffers from the effects of mercury poisoning, and she currently works in the band office of her community as environmental health coordinator. Welcome, Judy, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Well, before we get into our discussion today, I want to start by acknowledging that I'm here in Toronto, sacred land in the traditional territories of the Wendat, Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit, and that this territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. And at FoodShare, we think it's important to start any conversation on this land by recognizing the many nations of Indigenous peoples who presently live on this land, those who have spent time here, and the ancestors who have hunted and gathered on this land. I also want to acknowledge the many people of African descent who are not settlers, whose ancestors were forcibly displaced as part of the transatlantic slave trade, brought against their will, and made to work on these lands. At FoodShare, we believe that advancing Indigenous sovereignty is deeply and inextricably linked to Black liberation, and we remain committed to advancing both. Now, Judy, typically on the podcast, I like to start off with some icebreakers to kind of get the conversation started. Are you up for joining me on answering some of these?
Yes, sure.
Okay, great. First question I got here for you is, what is your favorite sweet treat or dessert?
I like apple pie and ice cream.
That's a good call. I have to ask, what kind of ice cream are we going to go with the apple pie?
Maple walnut.
Oh, good call. Yeah, I need that. Next one I have here is, what movie, TV show, or book could you enjoy over and over again?
I really like Mary Poppins,
Hmm.
and I can watch that over and over again because of the music.
It is really memorable now that you mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even, I'm thinking about some songs too. I'm not going to sing, but yeah, that's a good call. Last one I got for you, Judy, is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, I was faced with racism as a 14-year-old in Kenora, and I went home crying, and the biggest advice or best advice I ever got back then was, the only person you can change is yourself. And as a 14-year-old, I didn't understand that till as I got older. Then I realized that the people that I had faced racism with, and because I was telling them, I'm not what you say my people are. And I was only 14, and I was alone in a bus stop. It was like 11 p.m. at night. And for a little 14-year-old to say that to these grown white men was very strong, I think. But then I cried when I got home to my dad and I told him what they had said about my people. And he said, the only people you can change is yourself. And now I understand it. It's like I'm the best person I can be to humanity as a human being. And the only way I can change the world is by being the best person I can be.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That is something that I resonate really deeply with. I think about this often. I'm still coming to terms with what that really means, but I really appreciate you, expanding on like how does that show up and how you've come to appreciate this wisdom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for answering those with me, Judy.
Can I share one more thing?
Of course, yeah. Anything you got?
Okay. I used to have to go on a Greyhound bus to Toronto to go to high school, and so it was like 2 days of being in a bus. So I used to read a lot, and the thing that changed my outlook was Five Smooth Stones was a book I read, and some people should Google that, but it was a really powerful book for me. It was called Five Smooth Stones.
Interesting. I'm writing this down now. Do you mind sharing a bit about what it was about?
It was about Black people living in a society that was like really racist towards their people. And then the bottom line teaching was, if you look for racism will find you. That's the bottom line. So I've lived my life to not live with racism, and I've like it's really hard for me to run into it. And I see my sister who has not come to terms with that, and she faces a lot of racism in stores and restaurants and all that. But it's like, if you look for it, you'll find it. But if you live above it and live for humanity, then you'll experience life in a different way. It's almost like a spiritual journey we have on this earth as people. And I think as a teenager, reading that book like really helped me deal with the racism that I face as a Anishinaabe person on Indigenous lands. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to that too. I think sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in racism, not caught up in racism, but thinking about issues in this way
Mm-hmm.
rather than the grand scheme of things. And like you phrased it as like thinking about humanity more broadly and the roles that we play. I would love to get into a conversation about spiritual journey, but I don't think that's what we're going to chat about today. Maybe next time, though. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
But thinking about your work and your advocacy and some of the things that came up as I was sharing your bio, I recognize that there's a lot of folks who might be listening today that might be already familiar, but I kind of want to briefly explain what has happened in Grassy Narrows and what we'll be kind of focusing our conversation on today. So when I understand, Grassy Narrows is a community in northwestern Ontario, and in the 1960s and 70s, the Dryden paper mill upstream from Grassy Narrows dumped 9,000 kilograms of mercury into the river. The resulting pollution contaminated the fish and poisoned the Grassy Narrows people, who would drink the water and relied on fish as a staple for your diet. And the mill says that they stopped using mercury in processing in 1975, but mercury levels in the river have remained dangerously high. And fish near Grassy Narrows are considered the most mercury contaminated in the province. And the effects of the mercury dumped have damaged the Grassy Narrows people's traditional way of life and continue to have deep impacts on the community's health and well-being today. So before I ask you anything, is there anything that you feel I may have left out or you'd want to add to that piece there?
No, I think it's a good backgrounder for people that are listening, so they'll understand, where we are, what we face, and what we're dealing with every day.
Right. Well, thinking about how huge of a crisis this has been and how profoundly terrible an effect it's had on you folks in Grassy, I think it's important if I ask you, where do you come into all of this, Judy? And how has this impacted you and your loved ones? And I guess thinking about your work in the activism, was there a particular moment in your life that led you to getting involved?
Yeah, it was like in the early 1990s, there was a threat of nuclear waste being buried in our backyard, and I remember starting that fight to keep the nuclear waste out of our area, and we were successful installing it for 20 years. And we sent an elder, the late Mary Nelson, to Ottawa, and Winona LeDuc, who's a well-known environmental activist, paid for
Mm.
her plane fare. So that was like in the early days. And then when we're getting successful with these kind of initiatives, my brother took me aside and he said, "You know where the fight is?" He said, "It's in the logging, because the logging is the one that's destroying our way of life right now." And so that's kind of the mechanism that started everything, was my
Mm.
brother taking me aside and telling me that. And that's where it all started. And with my brother saying that, and so we started that anti-logging campaign. And then, as the years went by, we did like youth empowerment workshops, we did elders gatherings. It's almost like gathering knowledge from the ground up of how the logging industry has impacted the people. And it was like small scale, and then, like just within the community, trying to empower the people. And then eventually, going to I remember just going to Montreal with some hunters and trappers, but we stopped in Toronto, we stopped in Ottawa, and Ovid Mercury was the Grand Chieftain for Assembly First Nations, and he stood with us, and we did a protest in front of Parliament Hill. And then we went to Montreal and delivered a letter to Abitibi paper, which was in Kenora. So it was like in the early years, that was like the beginning of us opposing the logging
Mhm.
industry. And I remember one of the elders saying, "It's no use. We've already lost the fight many years ago." So that's kind of the energy that was on in the community. It was like the mercury poison happened. That's it. We lost our hunting and trapping areas. So it's like some of the older generation were like, give up already. There's no use in opposing this. Like that. That was the energy that I felt.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was a young person. Like I was like 30 years old, and it it was like, no, I'm not going to give up.
Mm.
That's just the feeling I had. Yeah, and now here we are today.
Wow, that's so powerful. I appreciate you, even in the face of adversity and hearing these messages of, just give up and sort of just let it go. That still didn't deter you, and you
Hmm.
continued pushing through. I imagine that there were folks that also didn't give up, right?
Yeah, I guess it'd be like re-inspiring the people, the community, and and especially the young people, and seeing, hey, this is wrong. All these logs coming out of our territory. This is wrong. It's been here all our lives. These logs coming out of our forest, and it became like a normal thing to drive behind a big logging truck, and sometimes the logs would spill on the side of the road. And so it was just like a part of life.
Mm.
And then when we started opposing it, people were starting to say, "Hey, yeah, they shouldn't be cutting the forest. Look at the medicines are going away, the animals are going away." So it's not just me alone. It was just like the people, like, kind of being shooken up and saying, "Yeah, we could do something about it. We could stop this." So it wasn't me alone. It was just like an energy of the people, like saying, "No, we don't want this no more."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, yeah, I think opposing it sort of, what I'm hearing is like it brought visibility to the devastation and what was really happening, what these logging companies were doing. And you mentioned the loss of medicine and the animals, and it makes me think
Mm-hmm.
about the significance of water also, right?
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah.
from a food perspective, and like this is sort of like my farmer hat that I'm wearing right now, but yeah, you need water for life, right? Like water is life,
Yeah.
whether it's growing food or yeah, irrigation in different ways or ensuring, this quality in the water that we're
Mm-hmm.
using. It's so significant. And I guess I'm curious to you, and you sort of allude to this with the medicine and the animals, but what does water mean to you in your community, other than the obvious, right? That water is necessary for life. And you can maybe share, what does that mean for your culture?
I guess my brother is my biggest inspiration in terms of water, because one thing the elders said when we had the elders gathering was the river system was our highway. There's no roads that were coming towards our area, so the river system was a way to go visit your relatives, because they were living like all over the land.
Mhm.
and and then I remember my brother saying one time that it became like he took some people out on the water. It was around November. It was like before it was getting really cold, and he said that his motor broke, so it was nighttime. It was getting nighttime, and he said that he looked at the trees and he recognized the tree line, and he remembered where they were. So he knew if he pushed a little bit further, like he was using a paddle, that they could find a landing in the dark. And mind you, you got to be aware that the water line, English-Wabigoon river system, it has sandbars, it has reefs, it has rocks, and so you have to know how to navigate through that river system. Like, it's not all friendly,
Right.
beautiful water. It's also very deadly, especially like in November when he was like when his motor broke, and he said he found the pathway and they got off on the landing. It was pitch dark, but he remembered the tree line. So these are gifts, that my people have in connection to the land and the water, is that, like, even the tree line to us, it looks like just a bunch of trees, but to him it was like a map of the land, and he knew where they were. So that's what guided him. He said they eventually found a road and they walked. He said it took him a couple hours to make it to the reserve. And he said they're freezing, but so his knowledge, his natural knowledge and connection to the land is what saved him.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you emphasized something there so importantly, like land. Like, yes, it's water, but also, yeah, the trees and being able to, like a natural map, sort of said. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm noticing also this is, you've brought up your brother once already in this conversation. And again, your brother seems, yeah, very wise, but also very impactful in your life.
Yeah. He's very knowledgeable and wise. He's very wise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds like it. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes up again. Um, and I welcome that by all means. I'm curious,
Hmm.
what was your relationship like to water before all of this has happened? And this is coming from a place from understanding that the advocacy and the activism that Grassy Narrows has been a part of now. You folks were pushed into this role, right? It wasn't something that you really asked for,
Hmm.
but this leadership and movement around water has been so crucial, like you said, to ensuring that the land and everything is cared for and that the medicines and the animals are cared for.
Hmm.
But I guess thinking back, like, yeah, how did you relate to water or with water, maybe in your younger years?
Well, like as a young person, my late dad, Robert Kizik, was a fisherman and a hunter and a trapper, and so we lived with that my whole life. And as a child, and
Mm,
him going out on the water, and then us, tagging along as they pulled up the nets from the water, and then processing them, putting them in ice, and taking them to town, and coming back with a big roll of money, to feed us, or like to. We didn't have much costs, but he was the only one that had a truck at that time, and so and
okay.
he was able to drive on the old logging road, and we had privileges as a child because he was the only one with a truck, and we were the only one with a TV too because he bought a generator, and he'd watch hockey in my home, and a whole bunch of guys would come watch hockey with us, and so it's just like um, being connected to that water. It seemed like it gained us privileges, I guess, with the commercial fishing. That he would sell the fish to Kenora, and then it allowed the other community members to, like, they're all also fishermen, and maybe he was a transporter, to take the fish to sell for them too. So my connection to water has always been like close, and being on boats was really like a part of us, always, every single day. And I guess I wanted to say, like, when you said it was kind of put in our laps, like this fight to protect the water because of the fish. Actually, like, before I came, I was like living in Toronto, and then I lived in Winnipeg, but I remember meeting activists in Winnipeg, and people that protected water, like Milton Borner the Tooth was one of them, and he was trying to protect the Old Man River in Alberta. So it's almost like I was getting training before I came back home to Grassy in 1995, because I'd gone to school, like in Toronto, and then I'd worked in Winnipeg, and then I eventually made my way home back to Grassy in 1995. So it was just like meeting these activists in Winnipeg, like the Hideaway from BC came through Winnipeg, and we went and supported them, and it was to protect their forest. So it's like I was getting all this mentorship from these people that were actively protecting their land and water. And then I went home with that under my belt, like knowing these mentorships from these strong activists from out west. And so I brought that home, and I shared that, and then we started that fight to protect the forest. So protecting water was like I was in training with these people that I was meeting in Winnipeg.
Right. Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that speaks to something of, like, meeting people along the way that you don't know what you'll learn. And they might teach you stuff, and you're not really expecting to be putting what you're learning to the test. Lack of words or per se. But that's yeah, that's something. For you to return home. Like, okay, now I got to put this all to use. And I'm assuming you weren't really expecting to do that. Like, were you aware of what was happening back home before you had arrived?
In a way, I was, but not really,
Yeah.
because I was like a young mom just having babies, and I wanted, like, I wanted a good place for my children. So my thought to come home was part of that, was like to come and raise my children close to the land. And I had my first baby in 1994. So it's just like, and then I was already doing things in 1995 in Grassy with my sisters and my brothers, like, it just like we, as I came home to my family, we became like a catalyst, like how do you call it? It's just like we energized each other, and me having my children, it made it more powerful for me to be able to pursue these things for the community. Like, it wasn't just about my children. It was like for the people in Grassy, like the community members, and then
Right.
it was just like we all helped each other. It's like once you start talking, and then you start energizing each other, and you help each other. Because a fight like this, it doesn't take one person; it takes a whole community. Just like when you guys do the farming, it'd probably be pretty hard to do the farming alone. You need like a whole team to help you, keep the farm going, and to harvest, and to can and jar and share to people. Like, you need a whole community, right? And that's the same thing with this activism in Grassy. Like, it took a whole community, and they're ready for it at the time.
Yeah, that's, I mean, first off, yes, there is absolutely no way I'd be running or helping out a farm if it was just me. That's that's not possible for one person, and I think that highlights the importance of community.
Mm-hmm.
Then, yeah, there's power in community, right? Of working together with others on a common goal for a better good. Yeah, I'm trying not to go off the rails here, but there's something so human about that, and so special and so important.
Yeah.
And I think about these folks that you met along the way that, may have not been a part of the Grassy Narrows community, but more broadly speaking, are still part of community in that way.
Yeah. And they trained us, by being who they were.
Right.
Protecting the land and water. And Milton Bornuda-Tooth, like, he passed on already, but he's fighting like a dam from being built on the glacial waters that was coming from the mountains, and he lost though, but he faced jail time, but it took a community to go and support him, because he ended up not serving that much time in jail for protecting the land and water. So again, community is important, like when these issues happen and we need the support from outside to do this work. Like, it'd be just like, like us trying to fight this big industry without people from outside helping us, advocating for us, creating awareness. We would be like at square one all the time, but with support from outside or like creating awareness all the time, like it creates that compassion from people that have a heart that care about the earth, that care about people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. I guess when thinking about solidarity in this way, have you seen more and more communities, like increase their in solidarity when thinking about the river run, which I haven't really asked much about. Over the years, like how has this sort of inter-community solidarity changed or grown?
Well, when we first started the river run in Toronto, it was like a few hundred, and then it built every 2 years. We're doing like a river run, and we had our demands, and then, but also it's not just about us like going to protest there, but it was also creating that empowerment to our people in Grassy to say, let's go protest, like that. And then they come there to Toronto and they see all the support and they go back home like thinking, hey, yeah, we can make changes, by doing this. And so it's also empowering the people in Grassy to not lose hope. And I think our last river run, we had 8,000 people. And that's huge compared to when we first started. If you look back on the numbers, like you'll see how small it was. And then now 8,000 people. And then you think of it as like back to water, like waves of knowledge going back to people's home tables and saying, did you know about Grassy? And then people start knowing what Grassy Narrows is and where we are and so on. So it's still creating that ripple, like the 8,000 people that were there are probably still talking about it. And hopefully we're going to come there again.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, maybe 10,000, 12,000, 20, let's just,
maybe.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. Well, when you consider how many people in the world,
I think it's like, close to
7
8
billion?
these days. 8 billion?
Okay, 8 billion. And then in Canada, 30 million. And then Toronto, like 6 million. So 8,000 people is like a drop in the bucket. So let's have more than 12,000, let's flood the streets. So like that, that's what keeps me going is like, let's keep talking to people. Let's keep sharing about Grassy and the injustices that are happening. Let's keep pushing it. That's how I
Yeah.
think.
And like you
Yeah.
said, like the waves, like just let those ripples and the waves continuing to touch others and just keep them moving, keep that movement.
Yeah. And also like putting it at a more personal level, like people in the community, like say in Six Nations, which is just south of Toronto, they're fighting against Nestle because Nestle was trying to use the aquifer to get water and, like destroying their aquifer. I went to one of our friends in near Niagara, and the family was a non-native family, and they lived in a really historic home. And they said their aquifer was called the Oneida Aquifer, and it was like 60 feet down into the earth for them to get that beautiful spring water. Like it was just tastes so good. And I was like, can I drink your water? Like, because that was in Oneida, and that's like a hugely populated area, and it's still amazing what Mother Earth provides for us, to have that good drinking water.
Absolutely. I think that's something there, like even
Mhm.
for non-Indigenous folks, like you said, like, yeah, having a connection or a relation to the land and personalizing these issues and realizing that, yeah, we all share this place. So how do we all care for it in that way and fight for it?
Yeah, and protect it.
Protect it. Protect it. I realize I jumped right into a question about the River Run, but some of our listeners might not be familiar with the event, which I understand is an annual protest that brings together community members and water advocates from Grassy down to Toronto to Queen's Park. But can you tell us more about it?
Well, it started in 2010 was our first one.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had a list of demands, and then we 2012, 2014, 2016, 2019. So each time it was like a learning experience because we had to mobilize a whole bunch of people from Grassy, and then finding them places to stay along the way, and then getting to Toronto, and then having places to stay there, and then getting them to march, and then sending them home. And then so it's also, I think internet has helped a lot because you're able to go on social medias and, notify people. And then everybody has a phone now. So like they get the notification there's a river run, and then there's a protest by Grassy Narrows people. So it's become more widely known because of the internet and the social media. And so River Run is actually, um, I guess, going back to English-Wabigoon river system and saying like the river's life, the water's life. So River Run just like puts that word into to more personal, like Grassy Narrows River Run, like the English-Wabigoon river system. We need that river to be clean and good to give us life. So that was why we called it River Run. And then we mimicked the river going through the city. We had like big blue cloths that people would carry and beautiful banners, that say water's life and support Grassy Narrows and so on. So it became like I guess it'd be like a feel-good protest. It wasn't violent. It was just like a peaceful reminder to people in government that, hey, we're not forgetting about Grassy. Grassy's still here. You may have poisoned the river, and they're here to tell everybody, they're still poisoned. So that's kind of like the origins of the river and I mean the river run. And so as the years progressed with each protest, it's been like uh, gotten more and more beautiful. Beautiful banners. Isaac Murdoch, a very well-known artist in Southern Ontario, he designed some images that were really breathtaking, and we still use those images. And so like if you look at the previous river runs, you'll see kind of like the beautiful banners that we've carried and how they've kind of how do you call it, got enhanced with each river run. And
Yeah.
yeah, even t-shirts, like the design of the t-shirts, and like they become more and more beautiful each time. And some have been simple designs, some have been really, the last one was really beautiful with the, I don't know if you could share that somehow someday, but that was a really good image. So the river run is like a mechanism that helps my people a lot to bring the issue to mainstream Canadian society.
Yeah, that's so important. I think I've seen these images in the past, but I'm sure, I mean, considering we're audio only, yeah, we can find some of those posters and those arts done by Isaac, and yeah, share it when we share this with the folks. And you spoke a bit about bringing these issues to the forefront, especially for mainstream Canadians or Canada thinking about it. But what are Grassy's current demands? And yeah, what are some of those things that you folks are raising more awareness to?
Well, Grassy's current demand is compensation for all. And in any other community in Canada, if there's a poisoning that happened, people usually get compensated. And I guess a good example would be Walkerton, which is like north of Toronto, and they got E. coli poisoning and they got compensated right away. And that's what we're seeking, is compensation for all, for the community members of Grassy Narrows. And I guess monetary compensation is what, to be more specific. And it'd be for the poison that we suffer with in our bodies, and for the government to acknowledge that and to say we want to be compensated for that.
Yeah, that seems crucial to the work that you folks are doing, and to yeah, the activism coming from the River Run. I'm thinking, it's funny, Judy. You mentioned this a little bit earlier in our conversation, but as a young person myself, and I'm doing work in different ways to bring about social change. Sometimes it feels like we're not making headway. Sometimes it feels hopeless. And I'm thinking about what you were saying with your elders in the community who were saying, just let it go, drop it. But myself, and I relate to what you said there, like we need to keep pushing. Like there's no, why stop when things are not better? So I'm curious, like what has helped you found like hope? Like how do you sustain hope and stay grounded in the work that you've been doing for 30 plus years, I believe?
I guess like it was just a few elders that did, say let it go, but I will acknowledge the elders that said, this is a good thing to do finally, and they have passed on now. And like I'll mention their name. It's like the late Mayor Ann Keewatin. She said, "Don't give up." The late Moses Land, who always stood beside us, and the late Tom Peash, who would travel with us, and the late Willie Keewatin. And like these are all like older people that said, "Don't give up." And I guess like I still hear their words when I do feel like giving up. And I do look at my nieces and nephews and their children and my kids and my grandchildren, and I think I'm going to go as long as I can and keep trying to inspire them so they continue to fight. When I'm long gone, just like when these elders are gone now over 20 years, and they inspired me to keep going. So I would like to be that elder for the younger people now, and so that they'll keep the fight going. And I guess for any of the podcast listeners, one of the things you can Google is well, not Google, is YouTube, is the Home to Me video. And the kids that are in that video, some of them were not born when the blockade happened. And as they grew up, they made that song and they got it. They got the message. Like when you listen to the words of those songs, it used to make me cry all the time. And just listening to that song. So, if people can take the time and YouTube that Home to Me video, Grassy Narrows, and you hear the words of these young people. So that's what I want, is for these young people to continue that fight as long as we can, till we get all the mercury justice that we need to have peace on our lands and our territories and our water.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Judy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an important to write on, was never give up, never let it go. Yeah, everything is resonating here with me. It's something I'm thinking about also, and I'm not sure if you get asked this often, but is there something that you could tell me about your community that has nothing to do with the mercury crisis?
Well, I guess people should know that we're a very small community. We have 800 people that live in the community, and we are outnumbered by youth and children, and we are a faster dying older population because of the mercury poisoning. And I'd like people to know that where we are is semi-remote, and the closest town is Kenora. So where we live is a forest that has been logged over since 1919. So that's a long history of our forests being devastated by the logging industry. So my word to people out there is okay, that's enough. You guys get out now. No more logging, no more mining, no nuclear waste, and just get the heck out of here and don't come back. Let us live. Let us, let the animals come back, let the clean water come back. That's my wish and my goal, and I hope the young people will also follow that.
Well, I back your wish and your goal. They can get lost, never come back. And I also would love to know that the animals and everybody else who's welcome there.
I'm gonna say one thing is where I'm sitting right now. It's at the blockade site, and there's a lake down below. It's called Slant Lake, and in my language, it's called Where the Road Ends. Kagbitanimuk, something like that. My brother said, and then there's trumpeters, swans that come there every year now since the logging stopped. And trumpeter swans were on a species at risk in Ontario for a long time, but now they're coming back. And there's this couple of swans that come every year. I could hear them right now. They sound like trumpets. And for them to thrive, they need quiet, peace, place to have their baby. And so we hear them all summer, just down the lake here. So to me, that's like a win. It's okay, the trumpeters are here. Right. It's in a really quiet place, and it's amazing. So it shows me kind of the effects of stopping the logging in our area is allowing these animals to come back. And the other thing is, growing up as a child, the birds used to wake me up. They're so noisy. It just wake me up. But there's a time when the logging was going full speed. Couldn't hear the birds anymore. It was quiet. And now, since we've stopped the logging since 2002, the birds are coming back and starting to wake me up
Which
again.
is a good thing. It sounds.
It's
so
thing.
Beautiful. I find it oddly ironic that the birds need the quiet, but they're the loud ones also. But respectfully, I can understand. That's and change is happening, like you said. Probably at a slow pace. These things are happening, and animals are a good reminder of that too. So we've been talking a
Yeah.
lot, Judy, and thank you again for sharing everything you've had. I'm sure listeners have much appreciated this conversation. I do want to leave this off with one question, and you've already touched on some of these actions around like watching the Home to Me video, I believe you called it. But I want to ask, like, how else can folks support
Yeah.
Grassy Narrows? Is that through donations, petitions, buying T-shirts, and anything that you share? We'll make sure that there's links attached in the description.
Yeah, I guess the easiest thing I could say is go to freegrassy.net. And in there's like a whole bunch of articles. There's photos of the river run, and there's like science research reports in there. And that's like a place where people can donate, and they can also order T-shirts. And so it's all like ongoing, because we're going to prepare for another river run. And keep your eyes and ears open for the next river run
That's
and
it.
be
You heard
there.
it, folks. Keep your eyes and ears open for the next river run, because it's going to be way over 1,000 next up. Promise. Well, thank you so much, Judy. I really appreciate you being here today. We've covered a lot of different topics, but it's been a really important conversation. And as I said, I just appreciate you sharing your experiences with us, especially knowing how deeply impacted you've been by all of this.
Mhm.
And I hope we can see some progress and justice for Grassy Narrows in the near future.
I hope so, and thank you for this podcast.
Of course, yeah, you're welcome, and always welcome if you have more to chat about. Maybe that spiritual journey.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's my jam. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dignity and Joy. And Dignity and Joy is a podcast from FoodShare Toronto. We're a food justice organization advocating for the right to food and working to challenge the systemic barriers that keep people from accessing the food that they need to thrive. You can learn more about our work on foodshare.net. And if you have any feedback on the podcast, we'd love to hear it. You can send us an email at info@foodshare.net or on our social media. We're at FoodShareTO on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Sound engineering and editing for Dignity and Joy is provided by the talented ears and hands of Mar Tizak. The production team of FoodShare is Renee D'Souza and Andrea Thompson, and special thank you to Amanda Cupido. Thanks so much for listening.